Okay, hi, sorry for the delay. It's Friday the 18th of September, Critical Thinking Lecture number 6. It's out. Okay, today I wanted to talk about this. So in the last 20 years, critical thinking, the context of critical thinking has massively changed. Can you tell me what the main changes are that have happened to the university? What are the most significant things that have happened to us, you as students, you as staff, researchers, society and knowledge in the last 20 years, since the beginning of this century? I can go back a little bit more, but the last 20, 30 years. What are the major changes? You can suggest. Yeah? Someone? You understand my question? The last 30 years, what do you think are the main changes for higher education for us? In Vietnam or in the world? Come on. So-called thinking caps on. What has changed, do you think, for society and knowledge, for the institution of the university, for Vietnam or for Ton Duc Thang? Remember, Ton Duc Thang did not exist 22 years ago. So that's one thing has changed. So there was nothing, and now there's TDTU. What else? I know you weren't there, but you must be able to imagine, think what are the significant events that have happened that affect the university or affect knowledge. We've talked about some already in this course. What has changed in the last 20 years? How is life for you as a student different to what it was for your parents or grandparent? 20 years ago was your parent. Yeah. Computing. Okay, yeah. So we made a map on the board about digital resources and electronic and so forth. We already did this on the board the other week. So 20 years ago, we didn't use a projector. 20 years ago, I had a machine, a big box, and some plastic transparencies. I put them on the machine and a light projected a shadow on the wall, and that was the same as this. Actually, no difference, but some difference. Okay, that's good. And I used a computer to make this. The old transparency I used, well, 25, 30 years ago, I used a photocopier, and before that, to make the paper, I used Sept. So a kind of sticker of all the letters, and you would put the piece of paper down, take the plate of stickers, and rub the sticker on to make the words. It was not computed. 30 years ago, it was just the beginning of computing. So within 10 years, that became ubiquitous, which means everywhere. We call it ubiquitous media. The world is saturated with media technologies. They are everywhere, even in your pockets where it should be. What else? Quick, quick, quick. Quick, quick. No, sit there. COVID. What has changed in, I've asked them already, what has changed in the way in which we do work at universities or in knowledge in society, whether it be the world or Vietnam, in the last 20 or 30 years? What are the big changes? I mean, the first one was the existence of TDT. We already talked about computing. Actually, we should call it digital. All right, that's one area. Study guidelines. Yes, yeah, that's an important thing. You know, when I was a student activist, when I was in undergraduate and then postgraduate, I was involved in student politics, and we campaigned and argued and fought for there to be rules of behavior for supervision for teachers and students, so teachers could not hit students or sleep with students, and they should supervise well, they should meet the student at least every month once. And so we wrote those guidelines. I was a researcher employed by the Council of Australian Postgraduate Association. I'm a bit sad that I wrote them, because since then every university has copied the same thing, plagiarism, right? And they've made them, they changed them a little bit, made them more and more boring. So we argued in those days that every student should have 1 day off per month to go shopping, like a mental health day, but that disappeared. But yes, absolutely. Guidelines. What we call audit culture. They call it audit culture, which is something like, from a metaphor from accounting. Everyone, every company must go to an accountant and have an accountant check its books. What was its profit? What was its expenditure? And so on. So, but in the university sector, now every year, well, now every month, no, now every course and every week, you check everything. And this has caused some other changes in the university. Guidelines are there, but also people to check the guidelines. So an increase in bureaucracy, administration, It used to be there was a teacher and some secretarial support. And the secretary, the teacher would handwrite their book, and the secretaries had to type it up with carbon copy before computing. When I did my undergraduate dissertation, was the first time we started to use computers. I typed my dissertation on a computer, but at the back of the computer, the cable to where the computer was, there was only one computer in the university, and I had a plug in the wall, and the computer was in another building because it was the size of the room. But I could type connected to that computer. In those days, that was when the secretaries of the department started to feel like, uh-oh, we will become unemployed because we don't have to type up the book. We won't be typing up the books anymore. But that was not the case. They didn't become unemployed. They became part of audit culture, and a massive increase of bureaucratic work and administrators, to the point of excess, I think. Absolutely, too many administrators. I'll talk about that when we work out the next thing that happened that really impacted in the last 30 years on higher education and society. What was that? For example, I look, and there are 27 of you here today. In fact, in this class, there are 57 people, and not all of you are here. But some people are watching online, right? Not right now, but in the next days. 27 of you. 30 years, 6, 12, 15 at the most. 15 was overcrowded. Too many. Okay, some courses had very big lectures with 200, but usually only in first year. After that, education was much more one-to-one. I had 6 students in one class. You get to know that person. You get to really shape their thinking. Now, we do it by a kind of remote. I get to know some of you well, sure, but not everyone. That's a change. And why? What's the major change that points to? You understand demography. What is a demographic? Demographic? Demographic, what is the origin? Okay, sounds Greek. Graphic is writing, but it means numbers actually. Demo. The population. Demos, the population. So the demography of the university will be those who are in the university, and in the last 30 years, in any society across the world, you can look at that increased from maybe 15% of people went to university. Actually, I don't know in Vietnam, but in England, to 50%. In India, from 5% to 20%. Like more than double. Much more than double. The number of people going to university increased. Used to be, in England anyway, you do undergraduate degree and you'll probably have a job, for sure. Now, that doesn't, you really need a university degree to get a job. Some people are saying, actually doing a university degree is a waste of time now, you should just go and get a job straight away because there are so few. Get some experience. No. But pretty much, even in Vietnam. I don't know, does anyone know what percentage of the population of your age group go to a university? Is it 20%? Is it 40%? Any idea? Anyone know? I saw this, but I forget the statistic. Anyway, certainly on average across the world, doubling and tripling of student numbers times 2 or times 3. But the number of lecturers has not increased. Lecturers stay pretty much the same, a little bit more, maybe 30% more. But administration, plus 30%, plus 250%. A massive growth area. And what do administrators really do? All right. What do they do? What do administrators really do? In my mind, what the administrators do is find work for academics to do that is not teaching, to take up their time, and then they find more administrators to employ so they can grow their kind of people. So administrators' job is to find more administrators. That's cynical. Really, their job is to look after all the guidelines and to service all the extra students. All these students need certain services. It used to be the professor would do everything. 30 years ago, a student in my class would not just come for what to read or come for just class and essay, but they came for everything. Advice on finance, for funding your degree, how can I get a grant? Right? Now we have administrators to do that, to give you awards or grants but how to get rent, where to live, what to do about the family situation, what to do about, even relationship advice. You shouldn't go there. People will cry in your office. There was a whole lot of more, I want to say intimate, life-related things that have all now become services. And the administration also includes things like psychology, student support office, counselling. I'm using a UK example. Every university will have a counselling sector. So when a student is feeling stress, quickly go to the counsellor and they will encourage you back to work. Previously, the lecturer would be the one they spoke to. I can't do the work, I'm blah, 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 blah. The university at this level, it's kind of like the relationship between teacher and student has been diversified to professionals and in fact privatized. So, used to be we gave advice on housing, now there is a student housing service. And there is Kituksa, right? No, Kituksa. Kituksa, but not only. In some universities, there's halls where they also do services to help students find accommodation in the private sector. I don't know if that's the case here in TDT, but now in the UK, private companies are taking over this. And food. on campus, not run by the university, but run by private companies. People have started to see the university as a place for business. So there's what I will call privatization. The old university was small enough and catered only for an elite fraction that it couldn't be turned into a business. Now, the massive expansion of education, with the rhetoric of we need a more educated workforce, has also enabled privatization, the commercialization of all the services in the university. Not only that, the privatization of education as such. You pay for your degree. And some companies are in the business of selling education. So can you see that in Vietnam? Yes, you can. Just look out, well, not out the window there, but just over there a bit, there's Rimet. Sounds like a frog. Rimet. What's frog in Tingget? A frog? Ek, kong ek, Rimet. I used to work for RMIT. In Australia, it's called RMIT. But here you call it Rimet. But they are an example of a university turning into an international company in the business of selling education. They are not here because they want to build Vietnam into a strong, advanced society. They are here because Vietnam is becoming a strong, advanced society, and that means opportunities for business. Fulbright is over there at Crescent Mall. Greenwich University is here. I mean, so many international universities have turned from the old idea of a university, Greenwich, for example, based in very old buildings in the Royal Observatory grounds of Greenwich University, where time begins, right? Greenwich Mean Time, GMT, where the clock is measured from. There was a Royal Naval College which trained the old Imperial Navy soldiers, naval sailors for colonialism. Now turned into, the Royal Naval College turned into a university, and now that university turned into an international corporation in the business of selling education. And everyone is doing that. Okay, TDT also a private concern, but we don't make so much profit, or all the profit is fed back into. But see what's happening. We have 5 campuses now, and yeah. Not only is this a Western phenomenon though, it's not just Monash University from Australia who have got a campus in Malaysia, or Nottingham University, which have campuses in China, or RMIT, which have Vietnam, Spain. Where else? They've got some others. Even Japanese university, Taiwanese university, they are spreading. So Japanese university is opening in Hanoi. Nagoya University opened in Hanoi. In the business of selling education, the Japanese expansion is very interesting because what happened there is related to demographics as well. The Japanese population has got older and older on average. Vietnam average population is quite young, right? It's a young society, but Japanese, they stopped having so many children because they got to a certain level of prosperity and family sizes went small. And now and they also live a long time, Japanese, to 110 and so on sometimes. But then if your population is older, the average population is something like in the 30s, you don't have as many young people as you used to have, so you have less students for university. It means, yeah, not everyone went to university, so you can expand, bring more young people into university, a higher percentage, but also the quality then goes down. And the old universities of Japan found that they couldn't get good quality students from Japan, so they started to recruit international students to come to Japan. And globalization was the factor. And that is closely related. Like globalization and privatization is, I don't mean like stronger together like Planet of the Apes or something. It's just bound up together, co-constituted. Without globalization, those universities, no, let's think about them as companies. Those university companies could not expand, could not recruit overseas students to come to Taiwan, come to Japan, or American universities getting students to come from everywhere in the world to America, or Australian universities getting overseas students. Right? And Vietnam saw this as an opportunity. Remember, 5-10 years ago, every single person who was going to go to do a PhD was thinking about going overseas. And now some will do their PhD at TDT or at Humanities and Social Science University or something like that. But not, still many. In fact, I think maybe still most will go overseas because of aspiration, but also because of very good advertising by those university companies, and just the romantic desire of, foreign. Okay, what happens when the university becomes privatized? What do you look? Privatized means becomes a company, becomes a private business in the private sector, in the sector of money making, not the state government regulated education sector. So of course most universities in Vietnam are still government regulated, but TDT is like the best of the experiment where some are outside of that system. TDT is independent, although right now, big debate about this with the president and so on. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to talk about that, just on the record. But we see that's what's the background for that happening. Also, I think in Da Nang, there's a big private university. Dan Toi, there's one in Can Tho, and so on. And there are some small ones also in Ho Chi Minh City. But that's an emergent thing here. The government and MOET, Ministry of Education and Training, which is a great name because it's also the best kind of champagne that you can get. Moet champagne, really good. Champagne bubbly, right? Anyway, that's just accidental. Moet controls education, and even now still manages to have some regulative guideline control, even with the independent, so-called independent universities, because you need accreditation in Vietnam. Although now there are also private companies that do the education, do the accreditation. So MOET is only one accreditation system, but some degrees, like your degree right now, are going through accreditation through an international agency, and that international accreditation agency is in the business of selling that service. So we will have to pay some funds to get accreditation with them. Of course, it's not just teaching, the business or administration that is privatized, so is research. That's the teaching demographic, but in research, company research and development is the big growth area. Now, I don't do any research myself that can be turned into new commodities. But many people in the university sector are now doing that exclusively. Instead of finding new planets or stars or universes or finding new things about medical technology, people are in the business of looking for innovative new products that can be then developed into marketed as new technologies for gain. And companies see that that is happening in universities, so they want part of that. We'll talk about this much more because this is a part of the whole science park or research park or special economic zone kind of idea. We talked about that a little bit in the culture course, if you remember. I think it was one of the later weeks, R&D in Malaysia. But that's a kind of commercial operation. So research becomes more and more oriented towards new production. And this is what my former employer, my vice chancellor, president, well, he was called a warden, actually, of my university when I was at Goldsmiths, University of London. I was professor there. He says, but John, how does your research help British industry? I want to destroy British industry. How can I help British industry? You should be doing, he said, you should be doing consultancy work for them. Consultancy, okay? So my work, my research at that time was on hip hop and the war on terror, anti-immigration law, and so on. Supporting that, supporting Asian community against immigration law, which was restricting who could come into the country. Right? Immigration law in England is so strict, people are forced to take risks to get into the country. At the same time as England wants cheap workers to come into the country, it also says, no, you can't come in. And so you have people climbing into secret compartments inside refrigerator vans and trying to sneak into the country. Three years ago, how many Vietnamese died in a refrigerated truck, right? 37 in one truck. That's because of immigration law. So my research was on that, to expose that. How can that help? How can I do a consultancy that helps the British industry on that? I can't. I'm against it. But no, he wanted me to turn my research towards something like that, some business opportunity. Can't do it. But some people can. They find ways. Right? So the other dimension of this is some companies coming to the research and development park, but also some companies like Google try and set up their own universities. So you know that Google thinks of itself, not its global operation, but in San Francisco, its headquarters, it talks about the Google campus. It thinks of the innovative and creative part of the university, of the company as a university. It thinks that the creative part of the company is like a campus, like a university where we do research, but they're not interested in disseminating knowledge to society. They say everything will be digitized, etc. But really, they want to keep the algorithm and keep the new product in their company. They do not want to share knowledge. That will mean they can't make profit. They share some small general knowledge, sure. But mainly, if research is done for a company, that company wants to have proprietary access to the knowledge. It cannot be in that old, maybe it was naive to think this, but old idea of knowledge being for everyone. That you do research in a university because it's universal. Right? We call them universities for a reason. Because knowledge should be accessible to everyone. so long as you can get through the class barrier and the steps to get into university and pay enough money and etc. Come from the right class fraction, done all that swatting and homeschool and extra tutoring. Yeah. But it should be for everyone. That ideology or that rhetoric of universal knowledge is especially embarrassingly empty when you think about companies' approach to knowledge. A company cannot share all its knowledge, otherwise it will go out of business. Some other competitor will come and do it a little bit cheaper. I mean, that's the whole thing about business, isn't it? One company sets up something, the other company, then other companies will be in competition with that one, trying to steal first of all what they were doing, copy it, maybe make some changes. So instead of Facebook, you have Zalo or something like that, right? And Facebook stocks are pretty high, but they come down when the other competitors move into the market. I mean, that's how Google got to be Google. Used to be Netscape, used to be Mozilla, used to be, wow, I don't even remember what the search engine was before Mozilla. This was before you were born, I think. In the 90s, there was no Google, right? Google came in the 2000s. There was Netscape that was really strong in the late 90s, but in the mid 90s, before Netscape, there was Mozilla. And before Mozilla, there was another one. Oh, even the history of knowledge is even getting erased in that. If you think Google is the main one, it was temporary and it's gone. So this is a major change. So my third change, so there's digitization, there's administration, and there's demographic, and privatization will be the context of that. Privatization, the making of company. So there's services that we're given, like for example, having class guards, security services, looking after us, watching to check that you're not sleeping. Soon to also be privatized, maybe not here, but in many universities, those services are provided by a company as well. Because more and more of our lives are being turned into economic relations. I think in another class, I think it was an anthropology class, I talked about, the culture class again, I talked about how even more and more parts of your personal life are turning into business arrangements. For example, 50 years ago, nobody in your family would have gone to the hairdresser to pay for a haircut. Somebody in the family cut their hair. Now we go and pay for your haircut, pay for your skin to be better. Used to be grandmother knew some special cultural recipe, right? Some herbs or something. You went to the village grandma or whatever and found out how to look after your skin. Now you go to a pharmaceutical company. Health, completely privatized. And the weird thing about it is the privatization, when there is a crisis and a real contradiction in the system, whether it be the university, the education sector, or the health sector, when there's a crisis, that's when companies see opportunity. Look at the companies falling over themselves to make profit from COVID. If you look worldwide, you see pharmaceutical companies are just rubbing their hands in glee because there will be huge potential for profit. And they are protecting their ideas about what the vaccine will look like and so on. Other places, some countries' attitude to it is much more open still. Vietnam, for example, keeps on sharing knowledge about COVID with the world, saying, look, we did it this way. Use our example. Because the world is racist, it's saying, oh, no, communists, we can't touch that. despite the fact that Vietnam has dealt with the virus well so far. But it also, this is really an interesting aspect, it's also been sharing knowledge a lot. So, in this new world, the old methods of scholarship, the old methods of study, of actually reading books, of checking resources and thinking critically about areas of work, they're still there. But many times, whether it be in administration or in corporate research, people are cutting corners, taking shortcuts, plagiarizing, for example, but not only. And the kind of things that we talked about last week, like the undercommons and finding a community of people that are really engaged with the idea of knowledge, that's still there as well, although sometimes activism or organizing student groups is also infiltrated by corporate types. You have in the student sector, for example, in my home university, University of Melbourne, we had political groups. So there was the Student Communist Society and the Student Democratic Society and so on. But there was also the Student Chocolate Appreciation Society. And they were in the business of marketing chocolate goods to students because students love chocolate, right? They saw it as a target audience for marketing. So even student groups became marketing tools. Actually, that's one thing we should probably put up as well. Marketing. Because not only is the